Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Shaw Upco speaker series. This is our first presentation, and we have with us Dr. Sandra Wint, who is a consultant in agriculture, science and technology policy, environmental issues with a focus on biosafety, marine policy, and climate change. She has an interest in SIDS issues, developing national framework, knowledge networks, and capacity building. Dr. Wint holds a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Science from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus in Jamaica, a Master's in Aquaculture, tropical aquaculture from Auburn University, and a PhD in Science and Technology Policy from the University of Sussex in England. So we're very happy to have Dr. Wint with us. And our topic today is resilient communities by the sea. Building resilient communities by the sea. Is this a reality or is this a pipe dream? So we'll get ready to start with our PowerPoint. Okay, Dr. Wint.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege to join you today, and I hope that your fundraising will meet its goals and contribute to the valuable work that is being done by Shaw Upco in partnership with a number of communities in Jamaica. When Dr. Shaw asked if I would be willing to give this lecture, I could not refuse her. I think it's my small contribution to this worthy program. As she said, I am a product of Jamaica and a student of UWI's marine zoology program several years ago, many decades ago. My study in natural science came alive during that program, thanks to Barry Wade in particular, who brought coastal management theory to life through being immersed in the reality of natural and man-made issues that impact the country. Zoology, chemistry, and geology suddenly made sense. Before it was, you study and you pass your exams, but all of a sudden it all started to come together. Now, today's topic, resilient communities by the sea, is therefore not a theoretical concept for me and for many of us who work in the area, as we are never far from the sea in Jamaica. The coastline is part of our existence. We work there. We spend our leisure time there. It gives us sustenance. People live along the coastline. It's a place for commercial activity, for the export of goods and services. It plays a big part in tourism, just to name a few of the areas that we are intimately involved in. Given this reality and given the length of this presentation, I will begin with exploring what underpins the title, resilience. Next slide, please. Resilience. And I put on slide 2 a definition that I came across, which I think broadly challenges us and tells us how we can think about resilience in the round. And it's an ability. It's really about having an ability to withstand adversity. Whatever life throws at you, in a sense, if you think of it at the individual level, it is that ability to deal with it and to recover and the ability to adjust. It's not just the ability to to survive it, but it's an ability to adjust and to react to that and to enable yourself to change and continue. That is what resilience is about. And so this definition talks about the ability to withstand adversity and recover, to adjust or to change to ensure the continued robust existence of individuals, communities, populations, and ecosystems. So it is relevant at several levels. This presentation is about communities, so I will restrict myself to dealing with at the community level. when we also think about resilience, we think about things like sustainability. And these words, we all use them. They are cliches. They are overworked. Everybody talks about sustainability and sustainable practices and resilience. And so, of course, when a cliche is used too much, too often, it becomes, it starts to lose its importance. We hear it, it rolls off the tongue, and we just move along. It no longer stops us and asks us to think, causes us to think about it. I think having this talk is probably going to help, I hope, us to at least give it some thought about what it actually means and what are the implications of it and what it is really expecting of us in terms of how we play our part. So what in this context does resilience mean? We look at some attributes of resilience in slide 3. And we see here that these attributes are relevant, again, at both individual and communal levels. And they need to be nurtured, identified and nurtured in a community. We need to understand what it demands of us for us to actually practice and try to get to a point where we can say that we are resilient. You will see words like tough, power, tenacity. We understand those. We're, in the Jamaican context, you're stubborn. Okay. It's things like strength, persistence. And of course, one of the things that's very important is the first word, adaptability. It's the ability to change in response to what is coming at you. But I'd like to point out the last word on the slide, patience. Patience is a quality many of us are not known for. However, we need to remember that in order to make significant change to a system over which we have less than complete control, it requires diligence, consistency, and belief in what we're doing. And patience. This is what patience is all about. Patience is having the ability to stay the course and not give up before we see the results, and not to rush things, but to be diligent and to be consistent in our approach. It will pay off in the end. That's the belief. If we do, if we apply the rules as we should, and the remedial actions that we are putting in place, we need to believe that in so doing, that we will reap the rewards at the end. Slide 4. Herein, I'm looking at what community actually means. And once again, looking at various bodies of research, certain words come up in terms of attributes that are applicable to what community may mean to various audiences. And I think we can agree that a community is a body that has a shared identity, a shared sense of purpose. It has some common goals, and in many instances, a common heritage and traditions. There's an emotional connection among the people who live in the community, and there are established communication channels. We all know about the the gossip that we hear about. This one tells that one knocks on that one's door, etc., etc., and word moves around a community via the grapevine. But there are other communication channels, excuse me, which have to come into play in an effective community. In other words, the transfer of information moves through these communication channels, and it's their effectiveness that will demonstrate how well run a community is and how well the people cooperate with each other. And the next point, of course, is the cooperative spirit. Once again, in a community, it is the sum of the efforts of all of the participants that will give the result that is to be shared among the community. And last but not least, and I think very importantly, the whole issue of trust. And standing out for me, out of all of this list, I would say shared identity, communication, and trust are three very, very important components. A cohesive community is one that openly communicates, provides information that is believable and consistent, and is trusted to be in the best interest of everyone. Slide 5. So bringing those two components together, resilient and community. A resilient community then, and this I sourced from an Australian Local Government Association website, says that a resilient community is socially connected and has infrastructure that can withstand disaster and foster community recovery. And I think that really is the aim of building resilience into a community, in that it ensures that no matter what is thrown at, what adverse effects may occur, that the community has the wherewithal to regroup and work to recover. It may change the shape and the look of the community, but it still stands. Resilient communities promote individual and community well-being and cohesiveness to strengthen the communities for everyday as well as extreme challenges. So what this is talking about is that there are rare events which are extreme, which require certain abilities, but nonetheless, there are daily occurrences which still require the functioning of the community at its, I suppose, what you would call a base level, wherein this is the norm, the normal behavior in the community. This is how everybody works together to live well. Because one of the things that we have to understand, remember always, that even though we're talking about, in many instances, adverse environmental issues, we are also looking at the well-being of the people. And so it is important that we never forget that it's the people who make the community. Slide 6, the next slide, please. And I put this together just as an overview to bring it all together to show that a typical resilient community is looking at, having three components, wherein it's the people, it's about the environment, and it's the economy. And many times when we're talking about resilience, we tend to forget the commercial activities that are involved, because regardless of what we want to say about, yes, it's, the environment and it's whatever, but nonetheless, the people who live in that environment are also making their living within that environment. And as such, all of those components have to be in sync and work at what I would call, not at the maximum level, but at an optimal level. Otherwise, what we would say to give sustainability, to ensure that a stable community emerges. So it is the coming together of all of those components. Next slide. Again, so when we think of resilient communities, we are thinking of, and I think this makes us think exactly what it is that the characteristics that we're looking for when we are describing what we think a resilient community looks like. And when we think of the people, what it is that they expect of their community. And a characteristic of a community is the people, and a sense of identity, a sense of connection with a particular place, a sense of belonging, a sense of it's, you know, this is where I am from. This is me. This is where my roots are. This is where I went to school. This is where my friends are, my family, my grandparents, my whoever, whatever. But it's my connection. And as a result of that, I need to do what's best to keep that connection and to keep that place going. So a sense of ownership of the place, not just because you're connected to it, but an understanding that ownership also means that you are connected to the issues, the problems, the difficulties that belong to that place. It is not just about, you know, the romance of being from a very pretty place. It's how to keep the place going and how to keep it just as pretty, how to keep it as healthy as it has always been, as you can remember it. So that brings us to, of course, a sense of responsibility, because along with that comes a sense of having the ability or the wherewithal to get the necessary work done. Some people have the ability to do to do physical work. Some people are willing to provide financial assistance. Some people are able to provide technical assistance or provide other resources. But all in all, it all comes together in that everybody is willing to contribute. And in many instances, we see, well, globally, that a lot of the work that's being done many times is being done by volunteers, because they have a sense of responsibility and they have a willingness to try to make a difference, no matter how small. Again, a cohesive community has a vision. It has an idea of what it is that the community should be like, an optimal vision of what they would like. And we can think of many things, a clean community, a community where everyone is employed, everyone is going to school, everyone is healthy, the environment is taken care of, there is no dumping of rubbish, etc. The roads are fit for purpose, etc. So every community, however, has different priorities. So everybody's vision will be slightly different in terms of what it is that they have as their vision, the optimal vision for their community. Now, having a vision and having a sense of responsibility and wanting to do things of necessity requires you to develop a plan of action. So well-run community would have a plan of action and an implementation process. And part of that plan of action, of course, is a decision as to how you prioritize. What are the more important things, the order in which you implement, and the logical sequence in terms of how you implement activities. And of course, having set out this plan of action and all of these activities, there, of course, needs to be buy-in from all of the stakeholders within that community, which, of course, goes back to the previous slide where I was talking about trust. So, and there's a high level of engagement. So all the stakeholders, they trust the process, they are convinced that it is the best thing, and they will work towards implementation and seeing the process through. Next slide. Of course, and also this is very important in that we have realistic expectations. It is we are accustomed to people making grandiose promises and not deliver, and when it's not delivered, there's disappointment, and that builds distrust in the process. So one of the key things is to have built into implementation plans the notion that there could be failure, but the failure, that failure is a part of the process, and you may have to do it over and over again. But of course, built into that resilience is that you are able to analyze the issue. What is this? What is the cause of the failure? And to look to creating other possible solutions and implementing them. So a fear of failure is something that is not a desirable part of a resilient community. It is, and I say this because there are always in every community naysayers who will look to the failures rather than acknowledge the effort that was made to try to resolve an issue and to try again. And so it is building trust and having the willingness to try. That is part of the backbone of having communal resilience. Another thing that I would highlight is, that is not on this list, is having cooperation and consensus building in this process. It is part and parcel of the well-being of a resilient community. Having good communication, a willingness to cooperate, and a willingness to build consensus around decision making. Slide 7. And so I just thought that, yes, having all of that information, if we look at how we could describe a resilient community, we would think of a community that is able to anticipate issues that are likely to affect the community. And in a sense, we know that, for example, in the Caribbean, we anticipate the start of the hurricane season. We know it starts, day X, month, what month it starts, and it ends how many months down the road. And we build our programs to deal with storms, the possibility of storms or major hurricane coming our way at some point during that period. We are also having to be flexible, and it does not mean that you're weak. Flexibility means that you are able to change course in the event of unforeseen occurrences. You are willing to try something new. You are willing to shift your stance, your belief, your stance, and refocus, redo, and change as necessary, as is necessary. And another thing is being curious, trying to find out what is the state of play, what other people are doing, how others fix problems, is something that is very important, in that if you look inwards and think that the only way you can solve your problem is within your community, and you're not willing to try anything that comes from outside, then your ability to deal with new external issues sometimes leave you defeated. So there has to be a willingness to understand and to learn new things and to absorb new information and to be willing to give it a try, see if it works. An important one is respecting knowledge. And here I have made it a point to include traditional knowledge. We talk about scientific knowledge and the data analysis, and it's very important, and that is what gives us the measurable inputs that we would rely on to give us the analysis and to point out key issues that we need to focus on. But nonetheless, there is value to be placed on traditional knowledge. It is the knowledge that has accumulated within the population of that community, of a community, that has been through trial and error, has come through and stood the test of time, and has found to be effective and helpful to the community. And more, the value of traditional knowledge is being seen and acknowledged throughout the world. And so I encourage that communities look to their citizens, for insightful information from them. A lot of it is observation, and especially in coastal communities, you can hear stories. Fisher folk can tell you about fish size, change in fish sizes, changes in fish populations, destruction of the reefs, change in the populations on coral reefs, etc. All of those things have value. Also, I have here value stakeholder inputs, but I think we could add another word to it, and that is respect. Respecting the opinions, the voices of all their stakeholders. And yes, and so encourage people to be brave or to want to speak their minds without fear of being ridiculed or being told that what they're saying makes no sense. And again, practice evidence-based decision-making. We sometimes, because we are emotionally involved, we tend to sometimes not want to do the hard work and get what I would call the emotive responses, which are not based on scientific evidence. And sometimes as a result of that, we can get carried away. I think that if we are true to some of these things and we communicate effectively, then it is the beginning of having an active and a community that is willing to be what I would call to be responsive to changes, to be able to anticipate occurrences which have yet to manifest, but at the same time be prepared and be willing to speak about it, to be willing to prepare, because it is hard to prepare sometimes, to convince people to be prepared for something that's in the future. But if there is a consensus, then you can be able to prepare yourself for an occurrence. For example, if you were to say, if for example, we destroyed the forest in our community, it is likely that we are going to, more than likely, we're going to have soil erosion and saltwater intrusion of X and Y. What do we need to do? It is not happening yet, but it is possible that it is going to happen because of certain things that you see happening around the community. Then it is time to take proactive action. Many people will probably say, no, it is a wasted expense. It is not going to happen, etc. But nonetheless, be prepared, I say, and be forewarned. And that is one of the hallmarks, I think, of a resilient community. Next slide, please. And this is a key point, as I was talking about knowledge before, and what is known as citizen science in all of this in terms of bringing a community together. And it's, no matter how you look at it, science at its root is about observation, basic science, observation. And people have knowledge, they see things, but if you are not aware that it has value, you just put it aside and you think, oh, well, it's not important. What I know is not, it's no big deal. It can't change anything. But be a community that talks and communicates will find that there is a reservoir of information that resides in its citizens that can help it in terms of how it manages its affairs. And a part of this is taking all of that information and applying scientific principles in terms of how to analyze those issues. So it is a process of having the community, talking to the community relaying information that it has based on its interactions with the environment, and having scientific principles applied to this. And this enables you to draw conclusions and to communicate those findings to the community. And of course, having scientific information helps to engender trust, and it helps to maintain transparency, because you can show how the data was gathered, you can show the tests that were applied, and you can show the analysis. This is all part and parcel of trust and transparency within a community. And also having this level of communication and this level of informing the community helps the community to want to communicate, and it helps to build the trust, and it helps to build the consensus, because you're giving inputs, you're getting feedback, and you're seeing what it means in terms of what needs to be done within the community to deal with those issues that have been analyzed and the science applied. At the end, you see, I have there a flexible approach that enables agreed additions to be incorporated into the solution. And earlier on, I was talking about adaptability, being able to adapt to deal with issues as they come. And this is part and parcel of the whole process of dealing with your citizens, having them feeling a part of it, having trust. So whenever you have new information or that will require some change, they believe you, they accept what you're saying, they understand the process, they see why you're making that recommendation. Next slide, please. And okay, well, this is also an important component of having a good, resilient community, in that activities are implemented, work has been done, it's been accomplished, and then what? Many systems don't have very good monitoring facilities. The work is done and we leave it alone. But there's monitoring and maintenance. and updating the system. If you implement an activity, can it be done better? Can it be improved on in any way? Does it need to be changed? Is it ineffective? Do you need to do something else? What is the response? That is all of the updating, because once again, everything has a cost. And if what you're doing is ineffective, then you need to look back at it and see how best you can either change it, modify it, or do you need to do something else that's vastly different. Because one of the things that you don't want to do is to build up a whole system of what the community will see as failures, because then you run the risk of, oh, whatever they try and do, it never works, it don't work, can't be bothered anymore, because it's just a waste of time, nothing works. But it goes back to the whole thing of being not being afraid of failure, but willing to try and to be flexible, to change, and to try another way. Next slide, please. So what are communities by the sea? And we think of communities by the sea as being located at the interface between land and sea. And in a sense, if you think of Jamaica, you look at it, most of our communities are fairly close to the sea in one way or the other. We are never far from the sea. So much of what is happening is island-wide. We are impacted by two main things: natural risk factors and human factors. On the natural factors, most of these we are very familiar with, but I've added saltwater intrusion as one that sometimes doesn't really readily come to mind, and siltation of our rivers, our estuaries, and our coral reefs. But I think it may not be something that is evident. So the average person may not think of, say, for example, saltwater intrusion as part of their everyday existence. But if you live in an area where there has been a lot of pumping of water for irrigation, for example, on the plains, and saltwater intrusion has come in and is poisoning the soil, it affects agricultural activities in those areas. So that is something that is of extreme importance. And the next slide. No, this slide after. Yes, thank you. And the human-generated risk factors, of course, we can think about removal of sand along the coastline, also deforestation, commercial activity. There's a concept now that is taking hold globally, the concept of over-tourism, wherein tourists are overwhelming certain places, and they have had to put in place, in the case of Venice, they have put in a charge where you pay to enter Venice, to visit Venice, and it goes towards maintenance of the place. And there are, for example, in I think it's Tenerife, where they are saying that the citizens are saying that their ability to live their life in the way they would like to in their communities are being destroyed because of too many tourists who come and are behaving in a way that is alien to their culture. So it is having that balance of commercial activity, especially with things like tourism, that does not destroy the well-being of the community that is involved or in close proximity to where tourism activities are taking place. Things such as lack of amenities or inadequate maintenance of amenities, in particular sewerage systems come to mind. And of course, pollution from various sources. And I have here both solid and liquid, because we've got issues of dumping of various types of material in various places, which impact not just the water table, but also the going out to sea and landing on the coral reefs or in the mangroves. Next slide, please. Here I'm looking at, I'm showing what has been called a resilience cycle. And in it, you will see that it's looking at how to improve resilience and what is to be done in the various steps. First of all, assessing the risk. I think everybody is familiar with that, because this is what we're talking about. Risk mitigation, risk prevention, risk management all come to play in terms of how you try to improve their ability to survive in these communities. Then, of course, we touched on planning and prioritizing what activities you need to do after you have assessed the various risks. And then, of course, to have an implementation plan, and of course, the recovery actions in this case would be after a hazardous event, which you see in the red arrow. And again, comes to mind monitoring, evaluating, and adaptation of any plans that you had implemented before, because each time an adverse occurrence, a hazard occurs, one has to look at whether or not one was able to effectively deal with it, and what else you need to do, and how you need to prepare better. So it's a loop. You are always continuously trying to improve, trying to have a better track record, and trying your best to see how you can anticipate any untoward issues from occurring. And of course, when you talk about managing a system, you have to once again talk about the resources that you need to put in place. And here, if you look at this, for example, monitoring, evaluating, and adapting plans, you start to think of, okay, you need to have data collection equipment, storage. So you're talking computers, you need to have recording equipment like phones, cameras, etc. When you look at recovery actions, for example, you're looking at moving stuff, trees, sand, things that have fallen down. You're looking at pumps for water removal if it's a flood, bulldozers, trucks, small tools, for example, etc. Then, of course, you have to pay people. You have to think of maintaining office, things like stationery, petrol, communication services. You have to pay for the internet. If you have an office, you cost for office space. If you have a system that is putting out communication bulletins, be it web pages, newsletters, whatever, All of those things contribute to the system, and they all need to be managed and paid for. I'd like to recommend at this point that within the system, every activity should have a clear plan. What is the aim? What is the aim of this activity? You need to know who the roles, who the not who, the roles and responsibilities of the participants in that activity. Who does what, who is responsible for what, and who works with whom. A clear understanding of the inputs that are required to conduct the activity, along with the associated costs. And also, how will success be measured? From the outset, it's important to know how will you deem that this activity has done what it's supposed to do? And also, who will evaluate and determine this? In many instances, the community itself will evaluate and say, well, this has worked because most of us have got X or Y or benefited from whatever, or a subset of the community. But nonetheless, evaluation of an activity is important, because then it is how you can build on that process, having accomplished that activity, how you then build on it. And the next slide. So in looking at building resilience, some researchers have done work and have been looking at how do you look at a community and decide what its level of resilience is, or how effective its resilience plans are. And this is from the University of South Carolina, June 2024. I looked it up, so it's fairly recent. And it has come up with baseline resilience indicators for communities. And you can see, once again, coming back to the same headings as that you have seen before. It's about the human, the economic, the environmental, the community, but it has added infrastructure and institutional. In other words, these two now fill out the actual framework within which the community is operating. And as a result of that, it brings in particular, I'd like to highlight the institutional governance. It brings in the framework of the laws of the land and the governance systems within which the community exists. For example, at the local level, you have the parish council. And at the national level, the government of the country. And then they are operating within the multilateral treaties such as the UN Convention, UN conventions and protocols on different things, and they add some international trade regimes and other instruments. For example, coastal communities would be particularly interested in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the UN Environment Program. And trade, for example, and international trade. Some other communities may be particularly interested in the climate change. In other areas, they may be interested in desertification, the desertification conventions. In others, the International Maritime Organization may be of particular interest, because these are framing the global imperatives, and many of the things that we are doing, like, you know, the 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, though they are international, but they trickle down, they cascade down into the local, to the local level. And it is within those contexts that we are all operating. So we have to bear those in mind, that some of the things that we may want to do cannot be done without consideration for some of these things. Because, for example, we have things to look at, like invasive species, for example, or endangered species, etc., that will define how we operate within the environment. And the next slide, please. To round it off, I would say that building community resilience is, as you see, it takes commitment, it takes time, and it takes money. And it is where those all intersect that we should be striving to be. And the next one. I found this and I thought that this was interesting, seeing that Dominica is in our region, and they are trying to develop a system for the country wherein they're resilient. So it's a countrywide resilient strategy that they are looking at. And I thought that this was interesting based on the based on what I was saying about communication and getting information in and around the community. And it talks about a cascade system, which starts at the top, at the national level, which is then trickled down until it reaches the community. And it depends, and it works with the traditional means of communication that they have in the community. So you've got official communication, traditional communication, so as a mix for getting information and out to the population. And I just thought that that was an interesting way of putting an example of resilience forward that is relevant to us, because as in the I put the where it can be found, because they are aware of the lack of some of modern technology for many of the communities, in that there is, in some communities, there is no internet, there is no smartphone, etc. And it's the traditional means that will get the information to people quickly and effectively. On this, next slide, please. And can you press that link for me? I think this is most appropriate when we talk about resilience. No matter how you throw him down and you think, he will bounce right back and continue to be.
You pick him up, you lick him down, him bounce right back. What a hard man for did. Pick him up, you lick him down, him bounce right back. What a hard man for did.
That's it. I think with that I can say never ever give up. And thank you.
I want to thank you. Let me stop sharing. I want to thank you, Dr. Wint. That was very interesting. That was very interesting. And that song by Prince Buster really sort of sealed the deal there. But it's very interesting, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to put together. And you know, this I can see as a framework of this information, rather, as a framework to take back, to divide as a method to implement and to improve our programs, and sort of generally as well. And I think this is going to be extremely key for the various different levels, to appreciate and understand, especially in our realm, which we're dealing with at the ground level, the folks, all the way up to those who are organizing programs and that sort of thing, to be able to understand how to implement it and how also to make it more effective, to the outcome. But the point that you made, patience. Everybody want everything done now and get it done now, but that point there, very, very important to stress. So, again, I want to thank you. This is going to be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. And I think it's going to be hugely important from an educational standpoint, and how to structure effectively programs going forward, to really help the community and help the community globally, from an education standpoint, from a resource provision, and all of that. So this has been fabulous, and I want to thank you.
You're more than welcome, and please keep me posted in terms of what you're doing in the future.
I shall. I may even tap into you again. So
I hope, and I wish you continued success, and I hope you will soon be able to post some of your wonderful outcomes to show how it's done.
absolutely, absolutely. We're actually compiling some already, so we're excited.
Excellent.
So once again, thank you. I know you are 6+ hours away, so thank you for taking the time, and I will give you back the rest of your day.
You're welcome, and it was good to be here. It actually caused me to focus my mind a little bit on the whole matter of it, because it's really about being logical and being organized, you know, and willing to go one step at a time. You can't do everything all at once.
No, and that is so key. And I think the point that you made about the stakeholders, really trying to get the stakeholders in, and being sensitive to the traditional way of communication at the ground level. So, yeah, lots of information here to process, put together.
If you get the, as they call them, the elders involved, and they feel respected, you can get a lot done.
Yes.
Yeah,
Our objective. All right. Thank you again.
You're welcome. And you have, well, it's 5 o'clock for me. You have a wonderful day ahead of you.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank
and
you.
I hope you collect a lot of money.
Yes, we're hoping. We have. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Okay, Judy. Bye.
Bye-bye.